anything gave you pause before overturning net neutrality? And as you look out over 10 years, if you have a nightmare, what is it that you might look at and say, damn, I didn't think about that?
In terms of net neutrality?
Yeah.
So what gave me pause in the lead up was I knew it was going to be politically controversial. I knew there was going to be blowback to it. But as I said earlier on, doing the right thing is always the right thing to do, especially when it's hard. And to me, at least, the bipartisan consensus we had from President Clinton all the way through the first 6 years of the Obama administration in favor of light touch regulation allowed the internet economy we have to thrive. $1.5 trillion of network investment, companies like Facebook and Amazon and Netflix and Google going from small startups to global giants, and consumers benefiting from that technology. I mean, I think it's hard to remember because we live in the day-to-day, but to think about how the internet has transformed everything we do, forget about making phone calls, from booking airline tickets and doing all these other things on this internet platform is unthinkable 20 years ago when the killer app was thought to be email. And so that's a result of the light touch framework we had. And so I think that political blowback is, one of the things I underestimated it, obviously. I didn't expect for people to threaten to murder my children as a result of that, but that happened. And so, but nonetheless, I've got a pretty thick skin. I'm going to keep focused on doing what I think is the right thing to do. And if you look at the predictions that were made when we made this vote on December 14th of 2017, this is the end of the internet as we know it. You're going to have to pay $5 per tweet. You're not going to be able to access Instagram, or my favorite, the internet will work one word at a time. Fast forward a year and a half, speeds are up 40% year over year after we made that decision. More fiber was deployed in 2018 to homes and businesses than in any year since they've been keeping records. Network investment was up $3 billion year over year, following declines in 2015 and 2016. And most importantly, as I mentioned, more and more people are able to access the internet for the first time. So to me,
So no concerns?
No.
No fears about what happens in the future?
I do have some fears about what happens in the future because I think that ultimately, as I've said before, one of the greatest threats to internet openness is not some of the companies for whom these regulations were targeted. It's the unaccountable companies who are in fact deciding what you see and what you don't. We don't have any transparency, for example, into how some of these search platforms order the rankings of what you see. We don't have any insight into how Twitter, for example, organizes some of its information. There's just no transparency. And so that's part of the reason why you now see a consensus in Washington on both sides of the aisle, in both houses of Congress, about how do we think about Silicon Valley companies. I'm not saying they should be regulated, but what I am saying is some of those companies that tried to foist heavy-handed Title II regulation on some of their network rivals are now essentially facing the same scrutiny themselves. And under the well-established precedent of goose versus gander, they are now going to have to think about how do we answer those charges of maybe constricting the internet experience for consumers. But in the long run, I think, look, this is a very simple solution, I think, anyway. And I've said this for 5 years, going back to my statement in February of 2015 when the DC Circuit rendered its decision, 2014 rather. Congress should put on the page the basic open internet principles that all of us agree on. No blocking of lawful content, no throttling of lawful content, no anti-competitive pay prioritization, transparency for every internet service provider in the country. I've just detailed in 10 seconds legislation that should pass 99-1. I don't know who the one would be, but there's always one. And so, to me at least, if Congress did that, we could move on to what I think is really the national calling of our time, which is to make sure that everyone has access to this platform. I mean, I'm telling you, when I'm on the Jemez Pueblo of New Mexico or in a poor town in rural Mississippi, these debates about Title II versus Title I regulation are so, it doesn't even register for them because they're off the grid altogether. And if one iota of the energy that's focused on this issue would be poured into that issue, closing the digital divide, our country would be so much better off as a result of it. So that's my number one concern, is that people are focusing on dancing on the head of this pin when in the meantime, there's an entire fabric there that's waiting to be woven.